Call the meeting to order. All 7 trustees present. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and Texas flags? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
We'll start with the superintendent's report.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you. Just a couple of updates before we move on. First, I just want to thank the principals and all the staff for a relatively smooth start to school. It's been good. It's been a good start this year. And so having said that, I do appreciate all the teachers and everything they're doing right now for our students. Having said that, I know that you want some updates. So I have before you our daily enrollment. We won't go over all of it. Right now, as of last Friday, we were at 8117. The second page breaks it down by campus, by grade level. The third page breaks it down by campus, by grade level, by teacher. And there's a legend on the bottom that either has special education, dual language, bilingual, or ESL. So just wanted you to have those. That currently we don't have any waivers. Our elementary numbers are actually down this year compared to last year. Our secondary numbers are actually up compared to this time last year. So there's enrollment. Kind of moving towards what's tied to enrollment is sometimes we are asked questions around what are we doing to close gaps and or address literacy. So I wanted you to have a copy of the literacy plan, the why, the how, the who, how it aligns the curriculum, instruction, accountability, community. The second page is the elementary literacy implementation plan this year through year 2021. And then the third page is the secondary literacy plan. So they're all aligned year 1 through year 2021. So it's just something for you to look at as your leisure. And finally, can you put that? So as you know, we moved our 8th graders, the great majority of them, to Algebra 1 this year. And so our teachers have been working feverishly, and actually it's going quite well. All our students in a more rigorous setting. But we do have this resource for our parents that's on our school district website. It's actually for grades 1 through pre-cal, that is video vignettes of different topics. We're pushing this out to our parents and getting them that information so that they can have access. Our teachers are doing a great job at both Miller and Goodnight of keeping communication up with our parents as we move forward. But this is just another example of what our team's doing to kind of address gaps in those data, the data that we see from STAR and other areas, and how we can push post-secondary readiness. I think this, along with testing our students on TSI, helps. And for those of you who don't know, our high school teachers actually took the TSI test so that they realized, oh, it's predominantly a reading test, which then goes back to the literacy plan. So everything is aligning to certain systems and putting systems in place to address those gaps that we have had. And finally, there was a question about our breakfast and lunch. And so I have that information. So it's a 14-day comparison last year to this year. So last year in 2017, we had 8,152 students, and this year, this actually was the most up to date. We're at 8,118 apparently. Breakfast, last year we'd served 35,707 breakfasts. This year we served 39,773. an increase of 4,066, about 10%. For lunch, we served 67,767 lunches at this time. This year, we're at 78,587, which is an increase of 10,820 lunches, about 14% increase with the new move. So those are the questions that were asked that hopefully we have answered. And with that, that is all I have for superintendent.
Okay.
President Cantu, could I ask a brief follow-up?
Sure.
On the math, Algebra 1 in 8th grade, so with those students who aren't going to go on and take calculus, what will their course sequence for math be in high school?
That's a good question.
There's a variety of options of fourth-year math, including statistics courses. We have some accounting courses also that kind of fall in math or the CTE pathways, but it allows them to pursue an interest that has to do with math instead of just a common course sequence that everybody has to take, if that isn't going to be something like calculus or calc PC or that's just not the point.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we don't have anybody for public forum. We'll continue with item 6, reports, information items, construction update. Bowman, you raised it?
Good evening. Tonight, we're going to do things a little bit different tonight. We have our contractors, 3 of our contractors here who will be giving a presentation as well. I have provided a copy of the handout, and we will have a copy, so I'll let Coleman start, and then we'll invite our contractors up here to do.
Good evening, Board. My name is Coleman Uresti. I'm from Perkins & Will. I'm a senior project manager that is overseeing the projects that are under design and under construction right now. I wanted to start with our typical bond update this evening. And again, we're going to break this up into the design part and the construction part. I think we're far enough along in construction that the contractors can start coming in, giving updates on their portion of work. I think it shows the separation of architecture, design, construction, so everybody starts to understand those roles a little bit clearer as well. Right now, we're currently on schedule with the overall bond schedule. Miller Middle School will come back next month and start talking about that in a little more depth. We're really jumping into that phasing of construction and how some of that stuff's worked. So we'll be able to talk about that in better depth next time. But overall schedule looking really good right now, even with a lot of the rain, and they'll jump into that, I'm sure, and talk about some of the rain out at the sites in a few minutes. With Miller, like I talked about, we're really jumping into the phasing. So this one's a tricky project. As you can see, the front of that building looks completely different. And how are we going to address the front door? How are we going to address parking? Where does staff come in? Where do buses come in? So we're starting to have initial conversations with the contractor. And then we're going to schedule a meeting and talk about that with campus staff and really start to dive into that because this one is probably the most extensive on additions and renovations. We're demoing a portion of the building. So where does administration go? Some of those things that we need to jump into. So by next month, when we give our design development presentation, we'll have a little more of that refined for you guys. I think the biggest thing is we've been meeting with the city quite a bit, making sure that they understand the scope of work so that they understand when they're reviewing the drawings for permits, that they know what's going on. And then, and we had a great design development meeting with every single department. We went into the layout of lockers. I mean, we got into a lot of the details, the layout of all the science and where the sinks sit, where fume hoods need to be, where safety showers are in science labs. So we really got into the good detail of that, and we'll be able to show you that a little bit more next month. Project updates for the elementary school. I'm going to present the design development package tonight, and I'll get into that one in just a moment. And then Transportation Center, KW Construction couldn't be here tonight, so I'm just going to give you a brief overview of where they are. And really, I kind of tried to get an overall of the site. So you can see most of the concrete parking for the buses is already in. They've been delayed by rain quite a bit. but you can see they're still trying to make progress on the exterior. They're getting all the flashing and everything ready for those windows in that picture there. That black portion, that band is a metal panel band that'll be going on next once the roof is fully installed. So they're still making progress. And Cindy and Jay have been going to every single job site meeting. They know what's going on out there, so they've been really on top of it. And then I'm going to let Weber here? We'll let them come up. You want to come up and give a quick update? Okay.
Were the easy ones this time? That's us. Good evening. My name's Bill Wyman. I'm the project manager with Weber Commercial. And we just have recently received our notice to proceed on the 28th of September. So as far as activity, we're just in the process of getting mobilized, getting our SWPPP up, construction job fence, and right now it's been a lot of coordination. We've got we've had a locating company come out to locate all the existing utilities and whether it's communication lines and everything else that we've had both out in the courtyard and in the bus lane themselves. As far as work that's coming up, the way that the project is phased, we're going to be working in the bus lane first, and our demo contractor is set to mobilize this week. We've got a couple more meetings with the city of San Marcos. One of them is our formal pre-construction meeting that we're having tomorrow, and then we will be able to move forward with actually starting the demolition. From there, we'll have our excavation contractor will start, and then our utility contractor will be following them up shortly thereafter. Yes, ma'am.
Questions?
All right.
Thanks.
Bartley, you want to come up?
Good evening, board members. I'm Josh Wackert with Bart Lecoq. I'm the project manager, and with me is the superintendent on this project, Wade Gabriel. We're doing San Marcos Elementary School number 7. Also, I guess the name now is Rodriguez Elementary School. We started at the end of June. June 29th was our notice to proceed. We're well underway. I don't think in this picture you can see it too well, but we identified the retaining wall, which is a 15-foot tall retaining wall that separates the upper and the lower level. We identified that as critical path early on, just how the structure ties together. You need to get that done. So we have that complete now. We are Area C, which is the area in concrete, 2-story classroom wing. We are erecting steel currently. We were able to get work in today and the last few days. Just having the crane on site before the rain got there played a critical role to that. We're working in the other 2 areas, grade beams, slab on grade, and we're also going to be finishing up piers pretty quickly with our MEP underground. Let's see. Yeah, so it's just right quick. What you see on that picture on the top right, that's the building transition between the lower and the upper level. So we started the waterproofing and the French drain. The forming is those are actually for the stiffeners and beams that tie the wall to the upper level. And then the 2-story level structural steel, we've been able to get about 42 pieces of steel a day, so moving pretty good.
Questions?
Have you been out there recently?
Yes, sir. We're out there every day.
Were there any surprises in how the site took water?
For the most part, it's draining and doing what it should be doing with with our temporary erosion controls. I mean, we did do a rough cut of our parking lot up close to our construction trailer, so that did hold some water. But we've been out there pumping Saturday and Sunday. I guess the storm that came through yesterday didn't really help, but we've had multiple pumps out there pumping down towards the detention pond, the temporary pond. So,
It's still on time at the moment.
yes, sir.
All right, thanks.
So,
And Cadence McShane is up next for the Hernandez project.
Egg is baked.
Good evening, board members. All right, just to give you a briefing on the Hernandez re-roof. This is what we're currently working on. I'm going to hit the bullet points here. The orange area is building D. That's where we started the re-roof portion of this project. As you can see, it's 100% highlighted. That means that we've actually made this area watertight, which means that we've added the roof huggers, added the insulation board, and covered it with membrane. The last thing that goes on in this particular area is the actual panels. The panels are currently being fabricated on site. The issue here is that it has to, we install the panels as we go along and to ensure that it's watertight. So in the past couple of week and a half, we've been having some rainy weather, so we haven't started there yet. So we're working in other areas that we can continue. Some of those areas are, if you look at the graph there, it's highlighted in blue. It's the soffit portion of that area, which is the soffit and the fascia. that area is being worked on, is being demoed, and then being reinstalled as we go. Another area that you see is highlighted in red. That is the nailer portion that the roof huggers are fixed to. It's a terminating end. On building E, we've got a little bit of that section installed currently. The areas in green, those are the canopies. Those are panels that have been installed on those canopies. What's remaining there is just the trim out. The ridge cap, and maybe some trim at the end. The gutters have been installed, the panels have been installed. So that portion is about 98% complete. Connecting the areas between small here, but the cafeteria and the gym, you see some lines, the purple lines there. Those indicate the gutters have been installed there. The next portion of work that occurs in that area are the panels themselves. So that we're gearing up to start those areas. We're actually focusing on the remaining canopies, which is this canopy here, and the canopy that's on the loading area of building E. That's the last panel. We demoed all the panels, but we haven't installed any. Right now, we're currently working around the students as they come in and out, and we're trying to work with them as far as getting those panels installed. We don't want to disrupt any school operations, so we're working around their schedule. We're also working in those areas in the evenings and in weekends. So currently, the reason we're not working on the academic wing right now is because we started fixing the roof huggers, and we determined early on that fixing the roof huggers, which is a bracket that spans across the existing metal panels, makes too much noise. So we're working those areas in the evenings and weekends as well. You see a little bit of orange over the cafeteria. That is the roof huggers I just spoke about. Since it is the cafeteria, we feel like we can work there without disrupting any academics. So what we've done there is install the roof huggers, the insulation board, and a little bit of the membrane that covers that makes it watertight. We don't want to go beyond that on any particular evening because we don't want to leave anything exposed to the elements and create a leak. So as they work through, they make sure that it's covered and watertight before they leave for the evening. Here's some pictures to kind of give you an idea of what I just explained. This is the building E, and the gray material that you see is the membrane that's already installed. This is ready for the roof panels to go on. Here I'm showing you the installation of the new soffits. If you recall in the previous picture, the soffits were blue. These are the new panels that go in. This is the color that's been selected. Again, this is at Building D. Here is the cafeteria. As you can see, a portion on the right side of the picture, you see a little bit of portion of the gray area, and on the left, you see the panels that are on ridge, the ridge panels. This indicates that we've installed the membrane on the right side and working our way to the front of the building. Here you can see the roof hugger system and the installation and the corridors, the connector corridors at G5 and G6. Here what I'm showing you at Building E is the installation of the wood nailers. If you look above the blue trim, you can see the wood nailers being installed. That's what the gutters affixed to. All right, so again, just to reiterate the work that's happened this past month, the installation of gutters and panels at Canopy EI, the installation of the roof panels on Canopy H, installation of the roof huggers and installation on Building B, panels at Building D, the R panels, fascia, and soffits at Building D, and then continuing the installation of the wood nailers on Building E, beginning the installation of roof huggers and installation on Building E, and then finally begin the demolition and soffits and fascia on Building B and Building E. Just to give you a briefing on where we stand on the schedule, we took a little bit of a hit with the weather, of course. The past week and a half, we've been working around the raindrops per se, and we have also, in working with the school and with noise, we've kind of had a restructure on how we go about installing these panels, and that's delayed the project just a little bit. So right now we're looking at completing the last building early part of December. Now there is some cleanup that goes in after that, and there's some punch list work that happens. So projecting that we'll be completely done before Christmas.
This is if we don't have a whole lot more rain.
That's right.
Don't say that.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And as promised, wanted to kind of give you an update on the elementary schools and the progress. And I've left a hard copy for you at your desks as well. Currently, we're right on schedule from a design standpoint. We've actually moved up a portion of the work. We're going to actually do a bid package 1 to get a little earlier on the site and the structural portion. So they could start foundation, grading, permitting, and our structural steel, start that process a little bit earlier, and then we'll release the architectural and the MEP in October. So we're actually going to release that first package Friday, and then come in October and release their second package. We'll still come as one GMP, but we're just trying to get a little bit of a head start, just so that you can get all those shop drawings and those, the manufacturing of the steel going a little bit quicker. That's usually that slow part getting going. So we're going to actually speed that process up just a little bit. But overall, still maintaining that same course that we've always talked about. Big meeting next week. We're going to come and talk about phasing. Again, we're doing a lot of work on campuses during the school year. So when they're starting to do their classroom additions, or they're going to start doing interior renovations of existing classrooms or flex spaces, we want to make sure that that's okay with the principals. Where can we be? At what times? Where are teachers? Do you have empty classrooms? Those kinds of things. So we're really going to work with them next week and get a better idea. And we do have a CM at risk. Cadence McShane is the contractor. So before this even bids, we're getting information. They're able to know what the process is. They're able to start getting schedules early on. We're not waiting until we bid it to be able to have that information. So that's a big advantage on this project. We had a meeting last week with principals and ILSs. As you can tell, we had VR goggles on. We were walking, ILSs were literally walking through their spaces virtually and able to sit in the little cubbies and play like they were reading books like the kids would be doing, checking, blind spots or, line of sight. So they got to walk through those spaces, which was really awesome. And only a couple people got motion sickness, Karen. But it was a really, really good meeting. They understood the space. When you're just looking at it in a floor plan, you're thinking, how tall are those bookshelves? What kind of furniture do you have over there? And they could actually walk through, see the tables, see the chairs, see the height of the bookshelves, understand the space a lot better. So it was a great tool to be able to use. So we were pretty excited to be able to use that with them. Just a quick recap of each campus and what the overall scope is. At BOWIE Elementary, we're doing a 4-classroom addition, which is in the top left-hand corner here. We're doing a full renovation of the library. And part of that renovation, and this goes for all campuses, is we're going to be able to fully renovate the space, be able to provide a community conference room, be able to provide a maker space and lab, and then also be able to provide the same support spaces that we are doing at Rodriguez Elementary School. So everybody district-wide will have the same types of support spaces across the board. And then also creating a new art lab, and then creating our flex space and some smaller intervention spaces. We've always talked about being more efficient with the layout. And so we're actually taking some of these larger classrooms and subdividing them so that we can get those classes of 4 or 5. They're not taking entire classrooms. We can dedicate that to larger classrooms. It allows more flexibility for principals and scheduling in the future. In the media center, very typical across the board, like I'd said, we're creating that technology-rich zone. So we have areas for our research computers, but also we work in groups now. The kids are not just going to be there by themselves. We're creating space next to each other so that you can have 2 kids at one computer. We're creating a little bump out spaces in the middle, so if I need to be writing something down, all I have to do is turn around and tell my friend, hey, I found this, write this down for your project. So we're creating it not just as a work zone, making it more interactive spaces. We also have our teaching spaces. Our media centers, our libraries are not just places to be storing books and researching on computers. ILSs are teaching how to research. They're teaching in those spaces. So we have a teaching zone as well that has a projection screen that can also be used for staff meetings. We have large presentation space, which is more of that Kiva style space. They wanted to create that intimate space where they can read to students still. And then we have more of a personalized, individualized space in the green. So those are those little little carrels or little nooks that the kids can climb in, get comfortable, and do some personal reading in a quieter space. And I think we can show you here in this view. So this front area here is that technology zone. We have our circulation desks still. And then in the back here, you can see some of where we're able to bring in some of those nooks. Oh, here's a better picture of those little nooks. So they're just little recesses in there kids can climb up into and read. Here's our teaching zone in the front here. And then really, I think the challenge, yes ma'am.
Sorry, does that add or subtract or keep the same the amount of shelf space for books that we currently have in the libraries?
We are keeping the same exact amount at each campus.
Thanks.
And then the challenge is we have existing colors throughout the campuses. So really trying to kind of modernize, make this an exciting space, right? It's not go to this space, read quietly any longer. So we're trying to add a little more excitement to the space, but also be cognizant of the existing materials there, making sure that we understand that we're trying to tie into an existing building. At CROCKETT Elementary, we have a classroom. Oh, let me get you. We have 3 classroom addition at the northern portion, and this one's different. It's going to be a 2-story addition. We actually have an outdoor covered space on the first floor, so they can break out and have an outdoor class space that actually has some shade and some water protection or rain protection. We're creating some flex spaces in the first floor and the second floor so that they can break out into those spaces. Full renovation of the media center or library, and then creating an art space with the kiln in there as well. Here we have our entrance off of this main corridor. Here we have our kiva, our more public presentation space, our teaching space, our reading nooks, and then our circulation desk and support space here. Here we have our community conference room off of this area here, which is really close to the front door. Easy access, you don't have to go through the library space, and then our maker space off the north there. So this would be more of that entry into off the main corridor, and then having our teaching space. We're standing kind of on the kiva. You can kind of see it in this lower corner, and then we have our little quieter reading spaces there. And then at Hernandez, the layout makes this so much fun. It's a challenge sometimes, but at the same time, I think it actually helped out. Amber really gave some good direction on how to lay out some of the spaces. This library is a little bit smaller than the other libraries, so we can't really take some of those spaces like our flex, our community, because we don't want to make that library any smaller. So what we've actually been able to do is create our maker space out here, and because that maker space, they get very interactive with it. If we create a glass front off of that, they can actually spill into that space, that flex open space right here. The teacher can still see what happens. They can let their robots run or do whatever they need to do in that space. So it kind of really worked out really well. So they have that flex space for this group here, or this pod. And then we have another flex space here that everybody can use here. Our community room is off of this wing here, and then a full renovation of the library center, which includes our entrance off of here, our technology center, our presentation, or our teaching zone, our presentation, and then our quieter space off of there. And just kind of give you an idea, as you're walking into it, here's our technology seating, our technology area with some informal seating, kind of like a little booth where kids can sit and take notes if they need to with their partners there. And then on the once you get inside, if we're standing on the kiva looking back, you can see we have our reading nook areas, and then keeping our stacks as they lay out. And then I think the great thing about this layout here is that circulation desk right there in the center. She can see everything that's going on, so it worked out really, really nicely. And then Mendez, no addition at this campus. We're actually creating flex space here, here, and here, with our community space here. And then in our media center, we have our technology zone as you walk right in. Our presentation space is right off of here. Our teaching space, and then our quieter, intimate space. And then we have our maker space here off of that 5th grade hallway. Just an example of what it could look like from your entry. So this is right as you walk in the school, and you look left, and then as you walk into the space, you see the kiva, the cubicles here, or the nooks, and then our teaching zone in front of us. Now something. Oh, and Travis, I forgot. Sorry, Travis. Travis, we have a 4 classroom addition on that kindergarten wing down there, and so as a part of the bond, we were picking up that playground, purchasing a new one, and moving it further down. And so it worked out really well the way that this addition comes in. Creating our flex space, our art in each hall, so first floor and second floor. We have some different sized flex spaces on the second floor, and then a larger one on the first floor, trying to give a little bit of different types of spaces for this campus. And then we have our full library renovation space. again, coming in, having that technology zone, our circulation desk, our maker space, community room, and then we have our Kiva, our teaching zone, and then our individual reading spaces. And just some examples of what that could look like in the space. So this is right as you walk in, and then this is kind of standing on the Kiva looking back towards our reading nooks there. And then I skipped over the flex space. I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper. They all have pretty much the same types of spaces. You know, we want it to be able to be flexible, technology rich, making sure all those walls you can just, you know, break into groups. You can have 3 or 4 different groups. They each take a wall. They can write on the walls. They can do whatever they need to do in that type of space. Place for individual seating as well. And just really trying to make it a flexible space. We don't want to have too much built in. Once you start building things in, it just locks down the use of that space. And so we don't want to be able to hinder any future use of those spaces. And that's all I have for the elementary schools. Any questions?
I was wondering if you could let me know how many seats we're adding at Travis and at Crockett and at BOWIE, please?
How many seats were added? At Travis, we have an additional 48. And I can and I have all this, if I can get back to you, I'll spell it all out and show the comparison from the bond planning. We have all the existing capacities and the new capacities per the bond. So
That's what I was interested in, yes. But it was 4 classes at Travis, 2 classrooms at Crockett, and 4 at BOWIE?
3 classrooms at Crockett and 4 at BOWIE.
Yeah, if you could pass along that increased capacity, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And then we have our design development update for the administration building. And it's been a little while since we've gotten to talk about this update. So again, this was another one of those projects where we got to bring in the virtual reality goggles. Everybody got to walk through the space. By the end of it, everybody's like, I'm not walking through there, so I put them on, and I actually got sick later that So being in there for like 20, 25 minutes, you get a little disoriented. So, and then Karen's telling me to slow down, not look around too much. So this project is being bid at the same time as the elementary schools, but keeping it separate. It is not a part of the bond. It is general fund money, so we have to track that money differently. But we're actually releasing this package 1 on Friday as well, and then we're going to issue a package 2 about the same time as the elementary schools. So they'll run parallel to each other. You're having so much work being done at Mendez that it didn't make sense to break it out. So we're looking at trying to keep that Sam's or that Walmart mentality, right? Like bulk volume. We'll be able to get discounted rates when we buy larger amounts of materials. So, and push that dollar a little bit further. Here, coming in, creating this new drive off of here, creating this parking lot here for the 100 spots. As you'd mentioned last time, we had a concern about the number of spots, so we've actually increased that to 100. We talked to the city, and we're meeting all their recommendations on the number of parking spots that are required by city. So we have that coming in here. Refining this bus loop just to make it a little bit safer. We're trying to get rid of that asphalt in the middle. We're creating that bus loop so no one can pass each other, right? We have to think about the safety and security for students coming out to this bus loop here. And so it creates that separation of elementary school and then our main entrance for administration. So parking here, you'd come directly into this corner right here. And I can show you here a picture in just a moment. So here, coming into this main entrance right here, you never leave this zone when you're coming in. So your approach, you know where to go. We're going to have some signage at the road at the intersection as well, so you know elementary school this way, administration this way. And I think from that front picture, I'm going to go back, you know, really creating that very visual picture. As you drive by, you know where to go for if you're going to administration. And this really hasn't changed a whole bunch since we presented to you last time. We still have superintendent and marketing communications down in this zone here. We have training and board right off the main lobby. So we're able to allocate types of spaces. You're not having to go through any other space to get to these spaces. We can lock down the rest of the building at night, so you're not walking, so the public doesn't have to walk through administration zones. And it just simplifies a lot of that circulation pattern. And as much as they use the boardroom and training here, we don't have to worry about people wandering through the building. You know, even for staff, teachers, they know exactly where to go when they come to the main administration building. Here we have HR is up here, finance is here, SPED is in this location, and then we have TLA in this location here. Now, as a part, if you remember, when the funding was approved, there was a certain section of money that was taken out, or renovation was taken out. So it includes this part here, and then what we're trying to do is make sure that we can afford to do the boardroom. Those two spaces add up to that exact square footage. So right now we're showing it, and we're bidding this space here. And then this is really just an open training room. It needs some paint and some ceiling, and we should be able to move forward without touching that space a lot. The only thing we'd have to do is we have to bring in our fire sprinkler for this entire building now, because we're changing types of occupancy. We're going to a business. We used to be education. So we have to upgrade to meet our current code. And then I think the real challenge is this is an older building. With a mansard roof. So it's very distinctive. The structure is actually built into this. That panel is actually structural, right? There's nothing spanning in that space. So what can we do to try to fix this in addition to removing a portion of that existing roof? And so we're looking at is coming in and removing this lower little band right here. And then what we'll do is rebuild a new band, and you can follow this along here, that comes solid across the front. And by solid, it could be a perforated metal panel. We can backlight it with purple. We can do, you know, like if we have board meetings at night, we can backlight it. Everybody knows, hey, there's board meetings going on. There's some of that. That's instead of just having a sign or something, you know, people just start to understand it. So we have some opportunity there to bring that in, and then creating that new entrance right here in this corner here. As a part of the scope, all of this band around the entire building gets torn off, and we're actually removing the lower portion of the roof. And let me see if I can get a picture. So this entire lower portion right here is all getting stripped off, down to just the joist. So we're putting new deck, new insulation, new roofing materials. So, and bringing it up to our current energy codes for this project. And just a quick view of what it could look like as you walk up to the building, creating this screen here along the front. Here's our main entrance right here, kind of creating a nice landscape entry with some outdoor seating. If you're waiting for a friend to go into the board meeting, you have a place to sit. But also thinking about the staff as well, and kind of creating some outdoor spaces for them as well if they want to be able to go outside and eat. You know, we're trying to get people to move, get up, be healthy, and so we're trying to offer some of those types of spaces for staff. And you can see this is kind of a covered seating area to encourage movement. And then talking about types of materials, carpeting and using a vinyl flooring that looks kind of like wood from a maintenance standpoint. It stands up to water. It stands up to those types of spaces. And then the furniture and the workspaces are actually by the school district. We're working with them to make sure we have all the layouts correct, and that's included in the budget, so it's in there. Making sure we have outlets and data and those types of spaces for all the workstations. And then really focusing on our finishes, bringing in San Marcos Purple, bringing in those logos, making sure that they're meeting our communications department's requests. And just a couple of renderings. So this is that front entrance. As you walk in the front door, here's the lobby space here. It was important to have some technology at the front. So if I wanted to come in, I wanted to apply for a job, I can just come in, sit down, apply for my job. We're providing that technology to people that don't have that opportunity. Creating some small seating spaces, so if somebody from HR needs to talk to somebody, they don't need to go into the very back. We have some opportunity to just sit down, have a brief conversation. They don't have to go into the back. So creating some of that more secure environment as well. And then interior rendering of the boardroom here. And we just had a meeting with technology and Karen to talk about some of those ins and outs of what happens in the boardroom. And we'll be able to come back next month and be able to show you in a little more detail. And then break room and conference room example in this location here. And then typical workspaces. Again, creating that open work environment creates that flexibility in the future. You don't have to put a bunch of offices up. We do have certain offices for certain meetings, but we're really focusing on being able to get up, go to take a phone call in a phone room, have a conference room. If you need to huddle with somebody, you go into a smaller conference room. And it's just creating more of a flexible work environment with this open space. All I have. Oh. And then Mr. Cardona had asked us to make sure that we have opportunities to be able to put student artwork up in the spaces. So creating, basically, as you walk in all the way down that front wall, creating tackable space, also creating some shelves for 3D artwork as well, so that you could just be able to pin up art from across the district. And as soon as you walk in, you can see all that stuff as you walk by. And that time I'm done. Okay.
So the admin building is completely separate from the Mendez Elementary?
That is correct.
There's not
All
a way to go
funding,
back and forth?
correct. All funding will be totally separate.
Questions?
I have
Ms.
several.
Halsey?
So I understand the funding's separate, but the physical buildings are actually separate. There will not be a passageway or a hallway between the two.
That is correct. So we're actually creating so right here there's a wall right there. So it actually separates where kids come in and leave. So you have to physically leave the administration building and go all the way around to be able to get into the gym. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then looking at this, I don't have a page number on it, but just the orientation for the facade I'm looking at this page, yeah, that one. So Peter Garza, the signage faces Peter Garza, correct?
Yes.
But the entrance then faces Del Sol?
No, I'm sorry. The entrance is Del Sol. This signage is off of Del Sol. So the address will be, if the city allows us to change the address, it'll be Del Sol, not Peter Garza.
So then around the corner is, that's Peter Garza?
Right, the front of the building.
Peter
Right,
Garza's
but
over
so,
here.
okay.
Right.
And then Del Sol's like this.
Kind of behind it.
So
Let
the
me show
entrance
you.
is in the back?
Yes, ma'am.
The side
So
street, the neighborhood.
Del Sol's here.
Right.
And that signage is right on the face of that sign, or that wall right there. So as you're driving by, you can see it right there.
And we don't want the signage on Peter Garza since it's the more main thoroughfare?
No?
Right, no, we're trying to keep it
School
totally
is
separate.
separate.
Keep it
Okay.
separate.
And then is there an entrance off the boardroom? I can't tell it looks like double doors.
So we do have a way, in the boardroom, you can actually leave out the back and go directly into the conference room here. And then there's a hallway back here that you could actually leave, like, from here, yes. There is a back way in.
Okay.
And that's just due to egress, fire egress.
Okay, and then I guess my next question is for Mr. Superintendent. The current budget is 4.5 million? And,
The board voted.
and what's the current square footage estimated?
I cannot remember. It's around 26,000 square feet.
For everything you've presented tonight?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you,
Okay.
Coleman.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Never mind, I'll do it later. Get it wrong.
Next is
Should ask
the
that
district zoning
televised
timeline.
School board meetings. Presentation is weird.
I handed out in your packet the district rezoning timeline. I don't know if anybody has any questions or if you want me to go over it or.
I'd appreciate you going over it.
Okay, just to let, what we have done, we have met with Templeton. We've gotten kind of a first draft using the spring numbers. So we took the spring numbers and we did some estimated boundary changes to incorporate the new elementary school, Rodriguez Elementary. We did on July 19th, we presented those new zones for the principal for feedback. We are waiting. September 13th, we just sent the updated numbers to Templeton so they could put in our fall data as we have it today. And so on October 11th, they're going to come back with those numbers so we can see how those boundary zones would affect the children that are in school at this time. On November 5th, we have an agenda prep, so we're suggesting, it's not saying that it's finalized, but a board workshop so we could go over the plan with the board on that time. And then during the months of December through February, we would like to have community parent meetings at all elementary campuses because every campus will be affected with this, including all elementary and secondary. High school and Bonham will not be affected because they're district-wide anyway. March 11th, we'll take it to the board for your approval for the final rezoning. And then we'll send letters to all the affected parents that would be changing. April 26th through March 3rd, we'd be accepting transfer requests and also grandfather requests. And by June 3rd, we will have numbers so we'll be able to accept or reject those transfer requests.
And so how are we going to accommodate the parents of fifth graders whose children might be going into sixth grade? When do they go to visit sixth grade campuses, and how will that be affected?
We start that in late March, early April, and that's why we wanted to have it set so that those kids would know where their feeder patterns are going to change.
So we're going to make sure that no child inadvertently goes and visits the wrong middle school and then is told later on that they're not going to be able to attend that one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
We have that issue right now where they want to go visit, and we tell them.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that in terms of the zoning, I think that might have happened the last time that some students were taken to one middle school and then later found out that the zones had changed in the time between that and they were rezoned, so. Thank you.
Glenn?
Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Superintendent, are we looking at more neighborhood schools than we currently have in the rezoning process? Kids who live nearby a school go to that school rather than going to a school farther away.
Yeah, we try to keep them neighborhood
Okay.
schools, but we do have this.
Madam President. Yes, thank you, Madam President. I guess just to reiterate Trustee Hanson's comment, I guess, I appreciate the timeline, but I guess as far as Templeton's methodology when it comes to draft proposals of rezoning, what best practices or guiding principles are they using? Is it, making sure that bus routes do not cross railroad tracks, major highways, thoroughfares, things like that? I'd like to see what that is. And again, like Trustee Hanson said, as the District 1 trustee, a majority of my constituents live across the street from Goodnight Middle School, but they do not go to Goodnight Middle School. And I know that's a constant thing that I hear year after year. So again, I'd like to see what those guiding principles are.
And that was part of the meeting that we had on June 19th. That was what we had met. Transportation came in that meeting because that's the first thing that we looked at with the changes of how that's going to affect routes, how that would affect students, how that would affect walkers. And then the second portion that we looked at with the principals is we're still trying to determine feeder patterns because now you have 7 elementaries and you've got 4 on the east side and 3 on the west. So we are still trying to work through that and balancing that. And so that's still some in the conversations of how we're going to approach that.
And then I guess, Ms. Cantu, sorry. My follow-up question to that is, it's my assumption that we are not opening Rodriguez Elementary School at capacity, that it's going to be significantly under enrolled to allow for the trace development to develop around it. Is that true or accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so, because I know in previous conversations we've talked about the cost of opening up a brand new school, hiring all these teachers, so on and so forth, but if we're just kind of moving around students, not really opening up a full, complete campus, I guess I'm just trying to clarify that that's what's actually going to happen, is that we're going to have maybe like a few hundred at Rodriguez, not the full capacity there when it opens.
Correct. We're looking at it to be half or more than half at capacity. We don't know what the transfer requests are going to be and then how that'll affect other campuses, but we are going to try and shift some of that, and we'll know more of that when we look at the rezoning and be able to tell how many students are moving from one campus to another.
Mr. McLaughlin?
I think I've expressed this concern before, but if we're going to open it, with 300 kids at Rodriguez, just picking that number out of the sky, I don't feel like we should change 8 schools' attendance boundaries to accommodate moving that many children. That seems unnecessarily disruptive to what's going on at every other campus in the district. Is there a reason that we are changing every school's boundary, even those that don't border what would be the Rodriguez boundary?
Yes, it affects all of them. It's a domino effect. When you move and shape out to for Rodriguez, it affects Hernandez and affects BOWIE. So those in turn will affect their site. So when you look at the whole thing, in order for us, it was very, very hard and complex. In order to do what we did, we met. We all even took a look at this, trying to figure out, well, what if you moved it here? Where we have our schools, trying to keep neighborhood schools, trying to keep our eco-dis numbers, you know, where they're pretty much comparison. That has been a very hard thing to do, trying to keep and look at zones in different directions, trying to look at, you know, safety as far as crossing 35. There's all kinds of things that we looked at, and the way that we have our schools positioned, it's virtually impossible to do that. So we were trying to come up with the best solutions, looking at where we could make the best impact for students, and also keep in mind for growth and knowing where the growth is coming in the city.
I appreciate that, but that doesn't explain why you would need to change, for instance, the CROCKETT attendance boundary. You've added capacity at CROCKETT with new classrooms.
Because it affects all, I can't, without being able to show you the map, it's hard for me to tell you, to show you, but it does. It's a domino effect. When we move the boundaries to insert a school, it affects everything around it.
No, but Northeast, for instance, they, superintendent can probably speak to this better than I, they open an elementary school every year, and they don't rezone every elementary school every year because they're opening a new school. Other school districts similarly, I mean,
But they do, when they do open an elementary, it does affect 5 or 6 schools in Northeast. We are 5 or 6 schools, so I mean, when we open one, it's gonna, they do. I mean, we've sat through those meetings as a principal, and when they wanted to move 100 kids from Emerald Forest, you know, to Madison, which is literally right across the highway, it affected Johnson High School, and the kids ultimately wound up going all the way to Churchill and driving by MacArthur as they were going by because of politics and stuff. So it does. We have, actually, I've sat in these meetings with them. I mean, we've tried to just fill it with 2 schools, and it affects everything. We'll show you if we have that way you can ask the Templeton people, and they are the experts.
yeah, I'm just worried that by this meeting, this thing's so far down the line that we're gonna hear, oh, it's late, you know, we've gotta stay, you know, there's little chance to shape the way it happens with the late meeting, would be my concern. Maybe that's not a concern. Maybe this thing can be shaped even at that late juncture, but I'm concerned that, you know, these things are very disruptive to families' patterns and where their kids have gone. And I mean, I've never seen more people turn out for community meetings than when we have rezoning meetings. And you know, it's a big deal. So I'd like to have an earlier, and maybe this is as early as we need, but as early as we could.
Yeah, we were trying to schedule the November 5th because PEAM snapshot is the end of October, and we would have, typically in most districts, that's when your largest enrollment is, so we're trying to give you the best numbers in the district.
So you'd have better data to deal with.
Correct. And then that's the first date that we.
Ms. Costilla?
Kathy was first and then it was me, so I think it was, yeah.
I appreciate you rezoning all the schools, because even with the additions, Crockett and Travis are still gonna need some relief. So that they, you know, because we have SEMA coming on pretty quickly here, so that's gonna be adding to the Crockett campus. So I can understand how it's gonna affect all the schools, and I would prefer more neighborhood schools, and if the economically disadvantaged numbers aren't the same of each campus, then I would rather us give more resources to the higher needs campuses.
The one thing we haven't talked about is the new charter coming in 2019, Clear Charter. They're actually housed in the same office complex we are, so they are a K-5. They don't have a physical plant yet. They have a November 5th, I believe. We're going to their meeting, some of us, to see, but they're targeting K-5. That's a whole different animal. Of they open K-2 and with 200 kids, it will affect. We saw a little bit of a hit with IDEA opening up in Kyle. We lost some families from Travis up there, so that's a whole different animal that could affect everything.
Ms. Costilla?
Am I to understand that we are possibly looking at going into what following up on Ms. Hanson's comments, going into neighborhood schools? Is that what I'm hearing?
We are going to give you an options, much like with the budget, that we will present to you.
Now, I have some concerns, and I think this board needs to have discussions on that. Primarily, I mean, if you look back into when we were talking about number of children in GT in Crockett, number of GT students at Mendez, I think we're going to have we need to have some real good dialogue, because yes, we're in the 21st century, but I want to make sure that students, if we're going to be looking at neighborhood, and I think this community needs to be aware of that, that if we're going into neighborhood schools, we're going to have real good dialogue on that. When we're looking at resources.
We not mentioned neighborhood schools.
No, I'm just saying, I'm following up with that if we are going to be doing that, we're going to have to be very cognizant of the fact of those resources that Ms. Hanson mentioned, because we are going to be having a demographics and neighborhood schools, and it's, some of us we're not going to be happy with.
So currently, right now, we do a differentiated budget for our schools based on socioeconomic status. So Mendez gets a little bit different budget than currently Crockett does, based on their socioeconomics. So we have already shifted internally to providing resources based on the socioeconomics, the risk load factors that we have talked about for 2 years, you know, homelessness in the neighborhood. We have shifted our internal practice for budgeting schools and staff based on that. So this will be very similar, and we actually have community meetings set up and to include members of the community who maybe don't have kids in school, but who are a part of, like, the bond planning committee. Those are people that you all appointed, that you trust to give us honest feedback, like just getting their feedback on this plan as we move forward, so that we can get everybody's perspective in the community. But we are trying to take like everything in and trying to make all of y'all happy. We will not make all of y'all happy, let me just say that, including some teachers and some principals. But we will bring you a menu like we did with the budget, and of different options of what things would look like rezoned in different ways.
Ms. Halsey?
Yeah, so I'm understanding that the board will have an opportunity to give input into a variety of ways that this could be planned at that November 5th workshop, even though it seems we all have different considerations. But okay, so I will say that my consideration would be, I would like to see a menu plan that has an evening of the economic disparities between the schools, because it's my understanding from the last time that this was done, and I was a parent when it happened, I attended the community meeting as a parent, and another parent asked Templeton why when Templeton presented, they said, we have kept the socioeconomic levels at all of the elementary school campuses the same in the rezoning, and a parent asked Templeton why that was done, and they were told in the meeting at the time that the board had instructed them to keep the socioeconomic levels consistent, not change them at all. And so I don't know if there was not an opportunity, or if that discussion didn't come up then, or what the process was, but I have a lot of concerns about that, and I would like to make sure that we are going to have an ample opportunity to discuss them. So.
We will.
Thank you.
Ms. Villalpando?
Haven't been part of that. There was some, the socioeconomic, we were not able to meet in every school. And I don't recall the exact reason why, but it was just impossible to balance them all exactly the same. But I do remember that they tried with everything they could to make it even as much as possible.
Yeah, and I totally understand that there are compromises and, you know, things that can't be made perfect, and that there were, I'm sure, many discussions. It was just the presentation by Templeton at the time was very much like, we have kept the socioeconomic levels, which are very not equal at the campuses, the same at the specific instruction of the board, which just seemed like a strange, without any sort of caveat or more complication to it, so.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I'd just like to thank Mrs. Griffith for bringing this timeline to us. I'm sure when I asked for it, she knew that this conversation would probably happen up here at the dais, so I appreciate her bringing this tonight. Mr. Superintendent, Madam President, I would request that we have the board workshop at the October agenda preparation meeting. Obviously, I think this is a very impassioned issue for all of us as trustees and elected officials and representatives of our community. And so obviously, as it goes to the principals and the leadership team, I think it would be prudent for us as trustees to kind of share with us kind of our values or what our expectations are. Just in regards to, you know, maybe I value short bus travel times, and, you know, another trustee values something else, neighborhood schools, or, you know, that students can walk to their campuses, or whatever those things might be. But I would think those, I guess, principles or expectations as trustees should be shared early on in the process so that Templeton is aware of them, versus at the tail end of the process after it's gone to staff several times and through several iterations. So I'm going to ask that we have it at the October meeting instead, but I will let the administration and President Cantu decide that.
That would be within 2 weeks.
October 8th.
October 8th.
It would be,
I
yeah,
thought it's
we
the
could,
first.
just gonna be old data. It'll be from the data that they presented in the spring. But I mean, we can do it.
Do we think there's going to be like 250 more kids show up by the end of October?
Potentially. It's like 197 last year, so it'll be about 200.
But if we establish our guiding
I don't know.
principles and it's just taking into account the new data, it's not going to change the fact that I want short bus routes or students to be able to walk to their school. I mean, even if there are 250 new kids by the end of October, I still want those 250 new kids to not ride the bus for an hour and a half, so.
Right, and I don't think it's necessarily that's the fact with updating the data. We just have a very transient community, and so a lot of times they base their number off the spring. When they come back, a lot of the kids have moved over the summer, so in order to make sure that we're looking at kids equitably and looking at where they're living and where the kids are and the hot spots, we would wanted to bring with the most updated student data so we could see what that would look like and the numbers, and that's why we like to update and bring numbers, because the scenarios changed, so or normally change. So that's the whole purpose of updating.
Absolutely, and I agree in, acknowledging the fact that our community is very transient. I mean, some of our families, not a majority, excuse me, follow cheap rent and, or live on a month-to-month basis, and I know the principals live that each and every day, so, I mean, even then, it's kind of, reading tea leaves when it comes to attendance zones because our community is so transient and mobile.
They were before me.
If we're
Who was
going,
first over here?
Well, Mr. McLaughlin was.
no, I was before him.
I think y'all were up before me. Go ahead, Al.
If we're going to move it up to the October.
October
agenda,
1st.
October 1st is what we've
Then,
got scheduled
then
for.
I would still like to keep the November so that we can have the snapshot data as part of it. Maybe the October 1st would just be, this is what we kind of want as far as guiding principles. And when I say neighborhood schools, I'm meaning kids who live across the street from school having to go ride a bus. So that's what, I'm not saying that everybody in that neighborhood specifically, but I think it's silly for kids to be on a bus when they can walk or something like that.
Ms. Costilla?
This is an important item, and I don't have a problem in waiting till November. I think we have to get all information and numbers in place for us to digest and look at. I'm just concerned to some extent, and I appreciate Ms. Hanson, everybody else over here making the comments about not wanting to keep children in buses for a long period of time or whatever. But like I said, I think we need to make sure that our community, some members, not some members, but as many segments of this community know, for individuals that have not experienced what it is to be going to one part of school, that experience is not a good experience, depending on what part you lived and then not having the resources. Having other parents make issue of that, having seen in years past, some years past, about some schools having resources versus some other schools or not. I just want to make sure, thank you, Mr. Superintendent, you were talking about you want to make everybody happy. I just want to make sure that this community is well represented in our schools. And that I think our children need to learn from the other ones and just in interaction with some of the other populations in the schools. So I just don't want us to lose sight of that fact, that when Ms. Hanson makes reference to about making sure that our schools have resources, but we want to make sure that our children interact with each other. And I think that's real important. As far as that, I'm not wanting you to make me happy, Mr. Superintendent. I just want to make sure that all segments of this community are well represented. That's my goal. And for us to have that information, to have that dialogue, that's what I'd like for us to have. Make sure that everybody's listening to that. And any comments coming in from the community, we need to listen to.
So I guess we'll be
President-
instructing admin to go
President-
ahead and schedule a first and for October 1st, the agenda prep, and then again in November, on the November 5th that you've already got. McLaughlin?
Are there presently draft versions of new zones?
Yes.
Well, I haven't seen those. Have y'all seen those?
No, because we were waiting, like I said, waiting for the updated numbers to see if those actually will work.
Well, it looks like you're meeting twice with new zones, suggested zones, then new zones on July 19th, and then again on October 11th to present new zones with updated data to principals and leadership team. And it feels like a lot of the cake's getting baked, before we have a look. And so I agree with Mr. Arredondo, the earlier the better, and I'd also like to see the draft versions if he could send those out after.
Okay.
Right.
1st and the 5th, is what I heard.
October 1st and
at
November
5
5th.
p.m.
Yeah. Yes.
October 1st at 5 p.m. Not noon. November 5th at 5 p.m.
Yes,
Yeah.
'cause I think the board would need more than the lunchtime hour.
It'll be a busy Monday, but it'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Griffith. Ready to move on to our consent agenda items. Approval of minutes, personnel action. We don't have any at this time. Consider approval of travel for San Marcos High School future business leaders, and consider approval of travel for San Marcos High School Orchestra to New York, and approval of piano donation. Ms. Hanson?
I move that we approve items A, C, D, and E.
I second that.
Moved by Ms. Hanson and seconded by Ms. Costilla that we approve A, C, D, and E.
Brief discussion.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to vote to approve all the consent items, but I would like to sound off for just a moment on how our student travel seems to be kind of an ad hoc process. Some organizations travel often, some organizations never travel, or seemingly never travel. I think it's a great opportunity for kids to see something outside of San Marcos. I think the arts and fine arts are a great way for them to do it, but I'm worried that some activities with a lot of travel carry with them a significant cost burden to kids. Other activities don't, and it creates kind of a dichotomy in the children that are in one activity as opposed to the children in another. So I would prefer down the line some sort of overall approach to this where we encouraged organizations to travel, say, every 3 years, but limited it to that as well. So that the experiences were shared and somewhat even and not dependent upon what you're in or what your parents can afford. So I know that's a big ask, and I'm not voting against anything proposed today because of that, but down the line that would at least make me as an individual trustee happy.
So you'd like to see a plan for travel?
Or
for
yeah,
student
some
travel.
sort of consolidated approach to how we do it, when we do it, and how we fund it, what we do about kids that can't afford it, so that specific activities didn't carry with them a specific price as they seem to now. If you want to do Diamond Line, we know it's going to cost you this much. If you want to do orchestra, you might have this travel that costs this much. And I know a lot of it's fundraised, but not always. Either the work burden or the cost burden's falling on the parents. So I don't have a solution, but just identifying something that maybe we could work on in the future.
Ms. Halsey?
I agree with Mr. McLaughlin, and I think a more systemic approach to how we allow students to travel for various activities would be great, including I know that there are a number of teachers that sort of really put together their own programs and need a little bit more administrative support. So I think having admin step in there and help make a more systemic approach is a great idea. I'm going to abstain from this vote, not because I am opposed to any of the things, but I was not at either of the meetings for which we were approving the minutes, so I'm going to abstain.
Any other comments? Call for the vote. All in favor? 6, 1 abstention. Items for action. Consider approval of resolution for Guadalupe County Appraisal District building repairs and expansion of parking lot.
On page 22 of your booklet, you will see a resolution for the Guadalupe County Appraisal District. They're requesting us to approve the resolution so that they can go forward in repairing their roof and their parking lot as needed. The $160,000 that is needed for this project is already in their budget, so they're not asking the district for any additional funds. They're just asking, they have to have the resolution approved by all taxing entities before they can do it, and that's what they're requesting today. We have Eric Stray here with the Guadalupe Appraisal District, if you all have any questions.
Mr. Redondo?
Yes, Ms. Cantu, or Mrs. Griffith, is there specific language that this motion needs to be worded as, or can you just do that, we motion to approve
Yeah,
resolution?
just a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Okay, then I move that we, San Marcos ISD Board, approve the resolution as presented for the Guadalupe Appraisal District.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Ms. Costilla seconds. Any further discussion or questions?
We want to let him present anything?
Were you going to present?
I just have some presentation here. If the board-
Sure.
if the desires.
Wait for him to come for nothing.
Well, I think he's gonna win.
Oh,
But, okay.
good evening. My name's Eric Stry, as already been stated, and I'm the Deputy Chief Appraiser for the Guadalupe Appraisal District. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent the Appraisal District in this meeting this evening. I'm here before you tonight to ask for the approval in the form of a resolution to move forward with an expenditure for roof repair, exterior building repair, and parking lot expansion. The roof repair and exterior wall repair is for the original portion of the office, which was built in 1984. The parking lot is the same size as it was when the original structure was built in 1984, and the district is now experiencing parking issues for the public, especially on days when our appraisal review board meets during the informal hearing season. As set out in section 6.051 subsection B of the Texas Property Tax Code, it establishes a timeline. On September 5th, 2018, the Appraisal District Board of Directors approved a resolution proposing the project to the jurisdictions. With the approval of that resolution by the Board of Directors, the Appraisal District, or the Chief Appraiser, was required to contact the presiding officer of each entity concerning the approved resolution, or letting you know that the Board of Directors has passed this. Upon receipt notification of the approved resolution, each entity must approve or disapprove by way of resolution the proposed project no later than Friday, October 5th, which is 30 days. The jurisdictions must file notice of passage or failure of the resolution to the district no later than Monday, October 15th. If the jurisdiction takes, or the entity takes no action, it's the same thing as a failure a disapproval. Just a few important notes here. Cost of the project, excluding architectural fees, is not to exceed $160,000, so it's going to be $160,000 or less. As far as a breakdown on that $160,000, the parking lot expansion cost is about $95,000. The repairs to the original exterior of the building and the roof amounts to $65,000. And as stated by Ms. Griffin, no additional funding is required from the entities in this. This is something we have in place. So we just need your approval to do so, to move forward with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Questions or comments? All in favor? 7. All opposed? 0.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for coming down here.
B, consider approval of resolution authorizing tax resale of foreclosed property, suite number 03-0553.
Yes, we have received a bid on Lot 8, Block 12 of DS Combs Addition in the amount of $3,200. This property went into foreclosure September 29th of 2004 with a value at judgment of $5,990. The minimum bid today is $3,200, and the judgment amount current is $9,979.72.
Ms. Hanson?
I move that we approve this resolution.
I'll second.
Mr. McLaughlin seconds. Any discussion?
Ms. Cantu.
Yes, Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I guess my question was, I know, and this was just reading from the newspaper, was I guess there was some conversation at the joint meeting between the city and the school district about tax foreclosed property and housing affordability, and I was just wondering what that conversation was, and if this sale of this tax foreclosed property prevents any of the discussion that took place at the joint meeting from occurring, or what the status of that was. I don't know what the status of that meeting was. I'm just speaking just anecdotally from what the Daily Record reported.
I can probably report from having been there and
Go ahead.
look into it. Whatever I miss, you can clean up. But the city has an idea that in the future they might want to rehab properties and get them back and resell them, take title, rehab them, and resell them themselves in-house, with the idea that that could alleviate housing unaffordability, at least for the people that are in those homes. And some of these things coming through tax resales were a part of that idea, but it was not something that was going to be by any stretch rolled out in 2018. So nothing that impacted this particular property. It would have to remain in the same state until that program, if that program even happens, until that program was online. I think both the county and the school district had some questions with regard to that program, how it would work. So it was just very much an early formative type of discussion rather than something specific. It would also, they thought, require a consolidation of the tax firm used by the city and the school district, which is presently different. They don't use Linebarger, right? They use somebody else, I don't know who. And so the board would have to act to make that change in order to facilitate. So I think it would, to me, the way governments work, you know, maybe a year out, something like that. And that might be optimistic.
Thank you.
And I think what's important is that the city, along with the county and with the school district, we're all concerned about affordability of housing for San Marcos. It's an issue with all three entities. So I think that this is a plan that they've worked on. We ready for a vote?
We have a motion and a second.
Yes, we have a motion. All in favor? 3, 4, 7. All opposed? 0. Consider approval of the 2018-2019 Student Code of Conduct.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Madam President, Mr. Superintendent. This is the 2018-2019 Student Code of Conduct. There were no changes made to the Code of Conduct. It's the exact same one that was approved last year because the legislative session was not in session. This year will be for the following year, so there are no changes to what we're presenting you this evening.
I thought there were changes due to special education.
Special education was for the student parent handbook.
Thank you.
Ready for a motion?
I move that we approve the Student Code of Conduct for 2018-19.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Viapando seconds. Any discussion, questions? All in favor? 7. All opposed? 0. Thank you. Consider approval of new SHAC members.
I think we submitted the names that had applied for the SHAC positions, and we had 6 names that came in before the deadline, and then 2 names right after the deadline. I'll make one additional statement. If you approve the first original 6, it contains 4 parents and 2 community members. It keeps us within compliance of having the majority be parents. If you extend out to the following 2 that came after the deadline, then we would not be in compliance with the majority being parents.
So are we not in compliance right now?
We're at 50-50. We were 51% before, but we had 1 parent withdraw this summer.
So
We're 50-50.
So is that in compliance? And by adding 4 parents and 4 non-parents, it somehow takes us out of compliance?
No, the ruling says the majority has to be, so does 51% make you into compliance?
So presently not in compliance?
Correct.
And Dylan Jones specifically is a parent, but that he doesn't count because he's an employee?
He did not identify himself as a parent. I'm sorry.
He did on the form.
But that's
Said he
right.
had a child at Hernandez.
On the form he does.
Okay.
So,
But the ruling says that it's a parent who is not also an employee,
Right.
or an employee who is not also a parent.
But adding
in
him
terms of the way
alone
that
would
the-
not bring us out of compliance because we would be adding 4 parents and
Right.
3 non-parents, right? And he is, we know, a parent.
so right now you need 8.
The recommendation that was presented by Mr. Rios and his daughter was that we wanted to have 7, that each of you could appoint 1. It is completely up to you how you would like to do that.
Ms. Halsey?
Yeah, so I have a question about the process again. So I thought when we discussed this in May, that it would come to us in early August with the people who had applied, with identification about which district they were in, and then each board member would appoint one parent, ostensibly from their representative district. And then there was an update last month at the meeting, and I apologize, I wasn't here. I was attending to a family matter, but I'm unsure of what that update was and why we're not now following that process. Is it because we didn't have enough applicants, or where are we at with that?
So originally, like you said, it was going to be an application process. We would receive them, present the applications to the board. So we were thinking we would get a little more applications, and then say 20 applicants, and then you would select 7. Each of you would select a member to add to the shack. So just receiving the 6 before the deadline and then 2 after the deadline, I mean, it made the application process just really
Simple.
very simple.
Ms. Costilla.
Ms. Costilla?
So are we adding 6 or are we adding 7 from these 8?
That's up to the board. We just want to present the information that was given to us. We definitely don't have a recommendation. It's totally up to the board. We just wanted to simplify the process.
Okay, maybe need to ask that question. Are we needing to add 7? Or are we needing to add 6?
We are not needing to add 7. So like I said, only 6 really turned in the application on time.
So we just need those 6.
Correct.
So if we add the 6, we're still in compliance with the majority being parents? Yes. Okay, Mr. McLaughlin?
I mean, I'll take a crack at throwing a motion out. I'll move that we add Chris Loy, Paige Beersdorfer, Yvonne Natali, Kelly Houston, and Dylan Jones.
Say that again, sorry.
Chris Loy, Paige Beersdorfer, Yvonne Natali, Kelly Houston, and Dylan Jones.
That's
For purposes
fine,
of
no?
discussion,
That's
I'll second Mr. McLaughlin's motion.
Okay, we've got 6. Loy?
I think it was 5.
Yeah, that was 5.
Oh, you had 5?
Yeah,
That was only 5.
I was thinking someone could come
1, 2,
behind
3,
and add
4,
any
5.
non-parents that we were inclined to add.
Okay.
So you're adding somebody after the deadline?
I just added the 5 parents that submitted applications
Right, but
without
one of
regard to their date.
One of them's
You
after
added
the
Dylan
deadline.
Jones.
Including Dylan.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Ms. Halsey?
So again, I really hope that we can get this process straightened out next year. It still frustrates me. I understand it's not anybody's fault. It's just sort of what it is, but I am happy to support those parents. I also would like to see Catherine Ewing and Alicia Jordan. I believe that Ms. Jordan served at one point on the shack, either when she was an employee, and I think she's demonstrated her commitment and her knowledge, and I think Ms. Ewing's professional expertise certainly qualifies her and is warranted and won't throw the balance out. So I would ask you to accept them as an amendment to your motion.
That would that be in compliance or out of compliance?
Who are you wanting to add?
Who are you adding, Ms. Halsey?
Catherine Ewing and
Oh, Ewan.
Alicia Jordan, who are not parents, but then we would still have a majority of parents by my count.
It just depends on your interpretation of the information by TEA, and that is that the majority are parents, not including employees, and that would be your understanding of Dylan Jones.
Right, well, no, I think,
It's 4-3
if it's equal,
Okay.
yeah.
If we add those 7,
Right.
Yeah, I just didn't want to answer.
we would still be more than 50% parents.
So we're leaving out
I'm going to
Nellie.
make a motion to amend, to add Ms. Catherine Ewing and Ms. Alicia Jordan to the
Do
list
you
of.
accept her,
Yes, and I'll second it if it needs.
Okay, so we've amended the motion. Instead of 5, we've got 7.
First 7, that's right.
The first 7. Discussion, questions?
I still seconded, right? Mr. McLaughlin?
You seconded the amendment.
Well, I second the new amended amendment now.
Oh, okay.
To the extent that's necessary.
Keep a track of that.
Okay, so we have to vote on the amendment first.
If it's friendly, then you don't have to.
The friendly amendment?
John said it was okay
I
to
don't know.
amend.
Do you?
You have to really,
I think you need to
Well, we
vote
did
on
it
the
either
Okay,
amendment.
well,
Okay,
let's
we
go
can
ahead
vote.
and vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment?
Which is a 7, right?
Yes.
The first,
7.
okay.
7.
And now we vote
Opposed?
on the-
0. Okay, so we voted on the amendment. Now we can vote on the motion of putting the first 7 people on the shack committee.
who seconded
Miguel,
the motion?
first motion, yes.
First motion, we only have
was-
5.
Yeah, but it's now amended.
And then
But
we
now
amended it.
we voted on
Okay.
the amended
Okay.
motion.
So the amended motion has the first 7.
Right.
But we have to vote on it.
Yes.
All in favor? 7, 0 opposed. We done.
Mr. Aradon.
Miguel. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Arredondo. Mr. Arredondo, sorry.
Okay, so now what?
Approval of facility usage waiver for Community Action GD program.
Yes, on page 96, you will see the GED program run by the Community Action is asking for us to waive the fees for them to use our facility. But these are for community members and former students of our district.
They do live in our district. They do live in our district, the students?
Most of them do. I think that we would take someone even if they didn't. But I believe that a majority of the students are San Marcos residents.
And so does it require custodian there while they're there, or?
I believe that the custodian cleans up, that our custodians come in late in the evening, so it's not a burden
An additional
on
burden.
our staff,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
So Community Action serves Hays County?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ms. Halsey?
So I recommend that the board, or I'm sorry, I make a motion that the board grant Community Action GED program a waiver for the 2018-2019 school year.
I'll second.
Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? 2, 3, 7. All opposed? 0. Consider extension of long-term use rental of facility for Riverstone Church at Crockett Elementary.
Ms. Cantu, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the long-term use rental of facility for Riverstone Church at Crockett Elementary.
I second.
Ms. Halsey seconds the motion. Any discussion or
I have
questions?
a comment. I just wanted to say, as a parent who's had 2 children at Crockett in the last year, that I've seen Riverstone really step up as a wonderful community partner, and I appreciate that contribution on their part.
All in favor of the motion? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? 0. We lost somebody. Did you?
Oh, John.
He stepped away.
Yeah.
He stepped away from the dais.
7:35.
7:36. Okay. Consider approval of design development for elementary school renovations.
Ms. Cantu, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the design development documents as presented for the elementary school renovations.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Halsey seconds the motion. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6. All opposed? 0. Consider approval of design development for central administration offices.
Ms. Cantu?
Ms. Hanson?
I move that we approve the design development for central admin offices.
I'll second.
Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any discussion or questions? Ms. Halsey?
I'm going to vote no, and that's because I think that the budget for this project is still too high.
Okay.
Ms. Cantu, before we proceed, I know on the, I guess, the design development documents, I apologize if I should have asked this earlier. When we approve, I guess, like the final proposal or whatever that looks like, is the athletic field or the proposed field going to come as like an alternate bid or as like an additional fund balance expenditure? What is that going to look like?
No, that would
It says
come in
like
as
future
a-
proposed, but like what does that mean in the scheme of things of that site and the development of that site?
In the presentation, what he did with schematic, remember y'all asked him to put that in?
Mhm.
So, he's showing where that can be. We're not developing it, and it's not in the design to develop, but it's a reserved place for the board to do something.
So like at a future
It's
board
just-
meeting, if we
yes.
allocate funds, but there's no additional conversation happening about that unless it's agendized by us or the administration? Okay, thank you.
All in favor of the motion? 4, 6. All opposed? 1 opposed. Consider approval of budget amendments.
Ms. Cantu, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the budget amendments as presented by the administration.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Yapando seconds. Any questions or discussions?
I have one question. Obviously, it's just like a account-to-account transfer for the College Board. Was that just like an error of putting it in the wrong function? Or?
Yes.
Okay, just wondering.
Did you have a presentation?
No, I'm pressing all these buttons, so.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ms. Halsey, you're not voting?
I'm voting against.
Okay. All opposed? 1. We have 1 opposed. 6-1. Consider action of 2018-2019 Improvement Plan, Domain 3, closing the gaps.
So with the new A through F system that came into effect, the ruling was actually made on the day of our August board meeting that any school district that earned a D or an F in a domain to just do a local targeted improvement plan, which we had already put in place when we had received the scores. So what we're presenting to you this evening and was discussed in the August meeting by myself and Mr. Barton and Ms. Hernsberger was just our plan of action. It shows the strategies that we're going to utilize to increase rigor for all of the students. While doing that too, we are cognizant of where we were as far as our gaps. If you go back to that presentation when we talked about closing the gaps are really target scores. So it's how our score compares to the target score. And in ELA overall, we were anywhere from 4% to a 6% gap, and then in mathematics, we were anywhere between 10 to 11%. So the plan shows you exactly what it is what we're doing, which is a lot of teacher centered professional learning, so they can take that into the classroom so we can focus on improving that instruction. But also when we met with principals, giving them names of the students, where Ms. Hernsberger showed them how to sort. She made videos on how to utilize that data and identify where the targeted gaps were for the students and then implement that into the classroom. Earlier you saw the Khan Academy. At Miller, we've identified about 40 students approximately, since we have every student in algebra. So those students during their enrichment time will be using Khan Academy, along with some of our math instructional coaches that will be going in and really personalizing and individualizing the instruction. We also included for you what our walkthrough calendar looks like, so you'll know that we are visiting all of the campuses. Those campuses, we provide feedback to the principals. The principals then go back and meet with their teachers. They utilize the PLCs to have those formative discussions and really apply it to how we're shaping instruction to improve and increase teaching and learning. Any questions?
Questions? Ready for a motion?
I move that we approve the action of approve the 2018-19 improvement plan for Domain 3.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Costilla seconds. Any further questions or discussions? All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions?
Yeah, President Cantu, I'm going to abstain because I am not qualified to analyze an instructional improvement plan, and I think this requirement is stupid from the state. I mean, we already monitor how the schools perform and make adjustments when we feel necessary, so the idea that that we are not doing that is kind of insulting. And then the idea that this is the way we would do it or how we would fix it is just dumb upon dumb, so I abstain.
Okay, it was 6
Can I change my
for,
vote?
0 against, and 1 abstention. Consider nomination to Guadalupe County Appraisal District Board of Directors.
Can we bring this back at the October board meeting? Because we still have time since the do we have anybody that?
Oh, no, we just got this, late, showing that they have another vacancy. And so, letting the board know that there is a vacancy, and I believe that, our next meeting is, October
17th, so that would give us
17th,
time.
before the 25th deadline. So in the event that the board wanted to designate someone, to the board, at that time, we can, bring it back at the next meeting.
That'd be my preference, and even maybe putting something on the website.
Mr. Redondo?
That's his district.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Mrs. Griffith, do we even have enough votes to like leverage an appointment onto this appraisal district board of directors?
Well, at this point, they just take the nominations, since they're not really voting, they're not using our votes. What they do is they take the nominations and then they vote upon the nominations. So,
Okay, so we nominate, but at the point where we actually give our votes to a candidate, do we have enough votes to elect someone to that board?
no.
Okay. Moving forward, can we find some process or something that may be an entity that has votes to leverage or almost has enough votes to leverage, that we can partner with them and see if we can find a nominee that meets both of our needs or represents both of our communities and jurisdictions? Because obviously we're just kind of throwing votes to the wind and maybe nominating someone who has no chance of ever getting an appointment unless they know that other jurisdiction, which at that point kind of meets the first question that I asked. So
Right, and the last time we did that, I brought you what the other entities, who they were voting for. In this particular instance, they're just taking names, that votes are not applied to this.
Yeah.
Basically, they take the name, they review them all, and they say, of the candidates listed that are interested, who would be that, person that they may pick to serve on that board. So this may be a little, one time that we do have, that chance to put someone on the board, if there's someone who's wanting to serve.
So do we need a motion to table this for next month?
I move to table it to see if we can find what other entities are nominating, or,
Okay.
or even
Somebody from our school district.
Right.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Villapando seconds to table the nomination for the Guadalupe County Appraisal District Board of Directors. All in favor? 7. All opposed? 0.
David Advisor, he's free.
We're ready to go into a closed meeting as authorized by section 5551.074 and 551.0821 of the Texas Government Code for discussion regarding level 3 grievance hearing with Karen Oliver, former SMCISD substitute teacher.
May we take a 10-minute break?
Let's take a break. Everybody needs to be a break. Nope.
The level 2 hold.
8:33. The board will reconvene in open session, ready for action regarding the level 3 grievance hearing discussed in closed session. Ms. Hanson?
I move that we deny the level 3 grievance hearing for Catherine Oliver.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Giapando seconds. All in favor? 5. Opposed? 2. Miguel and John.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? 3, 4, 5. Did everybody have their hand up?
Yes.
Yes.
7. Opposed? 0.